All right, welcome everybody. We are here once again, and today I have a really good guest for everybody. We're going to get into, some really good information. Being a new agent, being an established agent, working through challenges, and building an agency. Today, guys, I have Grant Smith from Apex Financial, what I would consider kind of a longtime client and friend. And so, Grant, appreciate you being here, man, and taking a few minutes to spend with us. I know you were super busy writing, managing and training and doing all kinds of stuff. So appreciate you taking a few minutes to give us some knowledge and share some wisdom, man. How's everything going?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me there, Oscar. It's going pretty well.
Nice.
Can't complain for a Wednesday.
Nice, man. Today, guys, here's what we're going to get into, right? Producing, right? Getting into the insurance business, what that looks like, right? What are the challenges in the first 30, 60 days? Then we're going to talk about once you overcome that, right? What does it look like? The things that you have to really have in place to take your business, take your career to that next level. And then, guys, stay tuned because towards the end, we're really going to focus around like agency building, team building, which is something that Grant is now super focused around and is doing currently. So all this great information, guys, is what we're going to go through on this episode. So I appreciate everybody doing here. Grant, before we kind of get started, man, give us a little intro. Tell us, how long you've been doing insurance, where you came from, what brought you into the business, man. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so I'm from Louisville, Kentucky originally. I live in Dallas, Texas now. But I came into the business back in June of 24. I just graduated college of December 23, went back home for 6 months. I originally planned on going to the military. Things changed. This was kind of my backup plan. I had 3 buddies that were in the same fraternity back in college that had moved down to Arkansas and then Dallas as well. And they were making a killing at it doing the door knocking. So in-person sales, all commission job. And, for me, knowing who they are from college, if they were making a killing at it, I figured I could do pretty well at it as well. So essentially, I packed up everything and I moved down to Dallas, Texas to join them in an all commissions door-to-door sales job. And so from there, my first 6 months of the business, I wrote 150, 160,000 issued paid. I got that first incentive trip under my belt there. It was American Amical's free trip to Scotland the following year. So that was a really rewarding experience, being able to kind of come out guns a-blazing of being in the business for 6 months, getting a free incentive all-inclusive trip, and just having success off the bat doing it. Fast forwards into 2025, the previous organization we were at, amazing place, great culture there, didn't have any complaints. The only thing with us was we didn't want to be, tied to the territory of Dallas each week for the long-term play. So essentially each week we're going out of town for 3 days, if not 4, Monday through Wednesday, Monday through Thursday. And we're staying in an Airbnb as a team, taking out 20 leads a week or so, getting those houses knocked, take out more if needed, and then come back home. And then we have a little 3-day weekend in Dallas. So it's kind of hard to have like a balance there and have a little life in Dallas. So we knew that wasn't in the long-term play, but we did have success where we were at. So then from there, we started kind of searching around, looking for an organization that had a in-depth, well-established telesales side, if not all telesales. And we went to 8% conference that was in Plano, Texas, where Cody Askins was putting it on. And we kind of did some networking there, and push came to shove. We found one organization. We went there for about a week, kind of some red flags that popped up while we were there. We ended up jumping ship a week later, and we found Dana. Well, we knew who Dana was, but we found her, and that's when we made the official jump to join Empower and Lasting Mark. So that started about last year of probably August, September of 2025. And then it's been kind of, not a second
Here we
thought
are.
since.
Yeah. Here we are today. Yeah. So good stuff there, man. A lot of stuff to kind of unpack. So I always, this is something that always comes up. So you were going to join the military, right? What was that crossroads, right? And I'll tell you my background here, because I was in the Marine Corps, but why was the choice, or why was that an option? Were you just like in a bad place in life, or you didn't know what the hell to do? And so the military was like, oh man, this might put me in shape and set me on the right path? Or like, what was what branch were you going to join? And then what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So I just had some kind of calling to it. I really didn't know what the hell I wanted to do all through college until like the last semester or two. And I just had some kind of calling to go and serve your country. And, really to see the world really is, the big thing that appealed to me about it, being able to travel, see the world, but you're actually doing it for something greater than yourself. People don't realize they're like kind of it's MEPS, I think, the doctor process, where they look at literally everything from birth till now. It's a lot more in depth than they realize. So I had some medical stuff from, when I was a kid that basically kind of booted me out, or they said I had to wait a set amount of years. So my original plan was to go into the National Guard to start and use that as a way to go into, eventually you can do an active duty unit with special forces. There's special forces, National Guard units throughout the U.S. So that was kind of my play to kind of get my foot in the door, and then, start kind of more part-time. And then this was going to be kind of like my plan B, that I do, the other half, and kind of just see where it went from there. But the military wasn't the full option. So then I just kind of jumped full ship on plan B. And I was just at a point in my life where, I graduated college. I needed a job. I need to feel like I had some momentum going somewhere. So I figured, what better way to do that than take risk and pick up everything and go halfway across the U.S.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Nice. Good stuff, man. Yeah. It's always interesting to hear that backdrop story. I joined the Marines just because I was at a place in life where if I didn't, I was going to end up in jail or probably dead, and so it was one of those things for me. But it completely kind of changed who I was and the path that I was on, and really set me straight, it happens too. I remember going to MEPS. Now you mentioned like MEPS, I remember going there, and I initially wanted to do something different, but I also had some health, stuff, like super flat feet, and my eyes were not great. And so it was like, well, you're not going to be a marksman, you know what I mean? But we'll use you as a grunt somewhere in here. And so that's what I did. So, but I always think anybody who even considers it and takes that leap, I think it always speaks volume to that person's character, and whether you went into it or not, like you were going into it, right? Your mind was made up, and it was like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I was running like hell. I was training, getting pull-ups, getting those push-ups in.
Yeah, man. So good stuff. All right, so that puts you on a track of like, all right, now what do I got to do? You end up. Oh, sorry. You end up. Sorry, I thought I put on just do not disturb here. So you end up joining this team. You fly halfway across the country. You guys start door knocking, right? This is something that I've heard of before, where like groups of agents go into like different areas and get an Airbnb and spend 3-4 days and just hit it hard, man. And it to me seems, I've never done it. I've never been a door-to-door person. I've always been a phone salesperson. And I've heard of, it's particularly younger guys, or younger people that go and kind of run that. I think obviously, like, what was your experience? I would imagine that you learned a hell of a lot real quick, on what sales is. But tell us a little bit about that door-to-door experience.
Yeah, I mean, until doing that, there's people out there that I didn't even know existed that live a certain way. So it was definitely eye-opening. I mean, yeah, essentially we travel. It looking back, it's like a hassle when you're in the moment, but it's definitely one of those things that, like, the camaraderie you get from it. You're traveling with the
Yeah.
same guys every week, getting into Airbnb, you know, you're learning, talking about your finances and stuff, your sales process at the end of the day in the mornings, you know. But really, I mean, you take out 20 leads or so. What I did was take out 20 leads a week. It's about $1,000 or so, give or take, plus Airbnb costs.
Yeah.
You know, you drive usually anywhere. It's about a 2-hour, whichever way. We always had west, north, or east. There was another team that covered the south below down to Houston. But yeah, you go out there on Monday, you got everything loaded up, your bag, hit the road, get right into town. It's these small little pocket towns outside of Dallas.
Right.
Because that's what the niche final expense clientele are, you know, usually down a dirt road and a beaten down trailer in the middle of the woods.
Man.
So, yeah, it's anything from that on the low end to, you know, old mom and pop on the farm, you know, with the dog going around outside. Yeah, it's an experience. It's something that definitely makes you, you know, take for granted, you know, the warm, nice house and stuff that you you're at in your life probably. Some of these people, you know, the market for final expense is people that can't afford those, you know, for a family member to pass away and they have to come out of pocket, you know, minimum $10,000.
Yeah. How did you deal? That was probably one of your first experiences with like rejection, right? Having people slam doors in your face or just say no, even though they had filled out this lead that you have, and now you're like knocking on their door. And to me, you know, just being in their face. How was that experience, and how did you initially start overcoming that? And obviously you did, right? Because you wrote 160, 150 grand in 6 months. So speaks, you know, volumes to your skill and who you are. But what was that like, that initial rejection of people like, no, I didn't fill this out, get the hell out of my house or whatever?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a learning curve. It's just new experiences there. So like the first time, I think the very first house I sat in with my upline, Matt Ross, it was a fella in his oversized jeans. He answered the door shirtless, smoking a cigarette. And we told him, you know, the card that he filled out in the mail saying his name, his address, you know, talking about final expenses, the direct mail lead. He looked at it and said, come on in. Go in and you sit down in their living room and, you know, just start shooting the shit. They just act like, you know, nothing's off. That was within the training. So obviously the first time doing it yourself is very nerve wracking. But as you go on throughout your journey of it, it's kind of like there's only so many different types of people you can come across. And so the more reps you get in, the more you know how to handle that type of person. You know, it's a sweet old Miss Betty that answers the door, invites you in, make sure you're not hungry for lunch. Or is it, you know, old man Jenkins that, you know, comes to the door with a shotgun and, you know, you just got to, hey man, I'm not here to cause you any harm here. I'm just here about the card that you filled out. It's your handwriting, right? Yeah. Showing that to them. So it's really just, it's a learning experience, and it's just not, you just can't quit. And you got to kind of get out of your own head. That's the hardest thing in the industry, is being in your own head of like, man, these people are just closing the doors on me, whatever else, you know. You just kind of got to keep persevering. Just go to the next door, take out that extra, you know, the extra 5 leads on the week, whatever it is. And that's really how you kind of.
So it wasn't like an easy thing, right? It was something that it took some time to learn. Obviously, like your first like 60 days in the business, what were your biggest challenges? And obviously it's very different from what you're doing now, because you're in telesales, but as a door-to-door, you know, salesperson, like what were the 1 or 2 of the like biggest challenges that you faced in those first 60 days?
Well, so originally I actually had my own little landscaping lawn care business. So I was kind of used to talking people about prices, you know, being on the property, walking around out there. So it wasn't too out of the blue for me, but within the first 60 days, I'd say, you know, the hardest things are just, you know, for one, not taking that rejection personally. You know, you're new to the business, like you're bound to get rejected here and there. It doesn't mean that you're doing, you know, a lot of times you can have, like my big thing was all about perfecting my pitch, perfecting my script. Every time, each week, every time I got rejected, I'd call my upline or someone else that's doing better than me, and I'd say, okay, here's what happened. I'm not sure what went wrong, but this is what I think. And then I'd repeat kind of the situation. Or sometimes I even went to the I got to the point where I would do a voice recording, or I just kind of hit a voice memo and put it in my pocket so I can record the convo. And that way I can share that with my upline or someone that's doing better than me and be like, this is exactly how it went. What would you suggest doing better? So I was always fine tuning my pitch, just a little bit here, a little bit there. And so you get to a certain point where when you know that what you're doing is correct, then you know that the no's are going to be, out of your control. You can't sell everyone. And so that was a really hard pill to swallow, is like, if I do the exact same thing with one person, there's a chance they're still not going to buy, whereas it worked perfectly for the other person. So I had to kind of wrap my head around that. And also just learning the business in the first 60 days. My advice to anyone's be a sponge, soak up as much as you can. The first 60, 90 days, honestly, like the first 6 months is really the hardest that you're going through. You're drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. You said something really important, man. Like the coaching aspect, right? Which we'll talk about now. And I'm sure one of the reasons you're in the part of the agency and part of the IMO that you're with, I think you realized how important that part is, right? The coaching, the systems. And it's something that I always try to talk to agents about, especially new ones, right? It's like, man, if you don't have the proper coaching, if you don't have someone to go to and say, hey, this happened, what would I do wrong, right? Where can I improve? And if you didn't have those things, do you think it would have taken a lot longer for you to like figure the business out, and likely maybe even put you in a place where you question being in the business?
Oh yeah, 100%. I question being in the business multiple times, essentially because, having someone that has had the success and has walked the same path as you is a night and day difference, because you know that where you're at when you're struggling is not the first time someone's been there. And, there is a light on the tunnel. You have a bad week, it's part of it, but that first bad week really definitely makes you question, man, I spent this money here, I'm doing this, what am I doing? I could go get a job with benefits and, guaranteed pay for doing the same thing. And that's just like that's a really hard mindset to come out of, going kind of from that like salary corporate world to like 1099 commission. You get what you get, or you get what you make out of it, versus, you show up and you get set amount. It makes a huge difference when you have that first good week. That's when you really start to get a taste of, what that's like.
Man, yeah, that's super important. I think that, so you start this road, you go on it, and you produce, right? Because you produced a pretty solid amount in those first 6 months, and now at some point you have the awareness, you and the group, right? Because I know there's several of you guys that all work together. You have this awareness. What was this aha moment where it was like, shit, man, driving and knocking on doors, like this isn't the efficient or the most efficient way to do this? What was there, like a moment or a period where you were like, there's got to be a different way to do this, which obviously led you into telesales? But was there a moment there? Because I think there's a lot of agents out there, I think now and in the last year or two, that have been door knocking for years, right? And I think now we're seeing this massive shift coming from that going into telesales. So for you, what was that period or thing that was like, man, we got to find a different way? Because I think that can help a lot of agents out there.
Yeah. So it definitely was more so that for what you're speaking to is probably more so for the other three buddies from college that were doing it, Matt, Hunter, and Aaron at the time. Matt and Hunter, they're still with it. They're with me right now here at Lasting Mark and Empower and whatnot. But essentially, they've been in the business for 3 years at that point, just about, since when I came. So they've been doing that door-to-door stuff much longer, and they were, I mean, they were pretty much burnt out, but I know that they know more than I do. So I was just, I'm on board with whatever they think is best.
Following along.
Yeah. And I did have a dream to travel. I want to be able to work from wherever I'm at and make money wherever I'm at. If I want to pick up and go somewhere, I can do that at my own free will. So I just didn't like really the being able to, or I guess you'd say, having to be strapped to the territory of Dallas. If I ever wanted to move back home, if I want to check out someplace else, I can't do that and make the same amount of money. And it's funny because it wasn't really a specific moment for, door knocking's not working anymore, we need to switch to telesales. There was a specific moment of like, I'm blessed to have this job for, the good and the bad. And that was beginning of 2025. We actually tried to step out and do our own thing, like become our own IMO essentially in a way. And that fumbled really fast. We didn't have a damn clue what we're doing. So there was like a month where we're just screwing around, trying to get leads and just sell with our carriers over the phone with no official script, no nothing. And that made us realize like, wow, the importance of having a plug and play system. So then we were glad to be back in the door knocking, have a job, making money again. And then there was also a transition period for about 2 months in between organizations before we were really solidified with Lasting Mark and Empower. That we were kind of living on savings or kickbacks, you could say. Luckily, we had some kickbacks coming in. But essentially, definitely my mind was definitely drifting towards other sales jobs, stuff with benefits, salary, whatever else, because I'm just sitting in limbo, asking if this is the right choice. And then, getting right back into it and starting to making that insurance money again. It was like, okay, I know exactly where I'm at.
And you stuck with it, right? Because I think that's something that everybody kind of goes through, at some point in life, business, man, when things aren't working out, things aren't going the right way, your mind kind of drifts, right? And it's like, all right, well, I can go get a job. I can go find something else and not have to like deal with this stress and the pressure. And obviously you work through that stuff and you guys pivoted, right? You guys all made the shift and moved into telesales. And so now you start telesales, right? Now a whole different animal, right? Because there's a big difference between being face to face with someone and being able to read someone's body language and how things are going versus now just being completely on the phone and having to use your voice, your rhythm, your cadence, and controlling that conversation. What now? Same question. Like you start telesales, what were the biggest challenges? And I think you said you started sometime in September, right?
It was like tail end of August, early September. Or maybe tail end of sometime in September. We'll just call it September.
Right. Yeah. And so what was that transition when you actually started? I think initially you probably bought some batches of leads and got things going. What then was like, again, the punch in the face of like, shit, I gotta make some adjustments. It's not the same as knocking on doors.
So it's not it's a different, same beast, different kind of lighting you're looking at in it. The door-to-door definitely made a night and day difference. Just understanding underwriting, knowing the type of clientele you're talking to. Like it's crazy. Some people just come straight into telesales and they don't know who they're talking to on the other side of that phone. Only people that went to door and only people that have done door-to-door would know what I'm referring to for the type of clientele. But it was really just honing in on being able to use your ears and your mouth, because you can't do it. You can't, if they start getting their, kind of up and worked up on, what you're talking about, or they're being kind of sharp and snappy with you, you can't just interrupt and build more rapport by asking about their fancy cat clock on the wall. You can't just like pivot, they have every opportunity just to hang up. So it really took like taking a step back and honing more into their why, which I kind of liked, because what they taught us for in person is you want to spend at least 7 to 10 minutes first time you're in that home building that rapport. You want to be their
Right.
friend.
Right.
Versus what I feel like it's like on the phones is, you know more than them. You are the credible figure that is here to help them. You just need to understand how you can help them.
Right.
And
so
so
controlling, more of that control and getting into that, having that that ability to showcase you as the expert and like taking over. That's an interesting difference between the two.
Yeah. So that's definitely, so just really having to hone in on listening, understanding them. But outside of that, I mean, hell, the hardest part was only being able to write with like 2 or 3 carriers to start. I think it was like combined Aflac and Gerber for GI. That was for the first multiple months.
As earned, everything was as earned.
What'd you say?
As earned, with Gerber, it's like you're like
Gerber's
tied.
as earned, Aflac's a couple, a commission or two below, and combined was like a new insurance company. So yeah, that was it was an uphill battle, man. But each month we got through it, it got better. And I think all three, me, Hunter, and Matt, who we came over together, I think we all wrote a minimum of 30,000 in our first full month, which was October, with just those 3 carriers.
Wow.
So
incredible.
That was like a real good feeling getting back into it, like doing the high production in the new job in our first full month. So that gave us a lot of juice for moving forwards.
To keep going. Right. So you get that, and now you transition, carriers start happening, which was, again, as you say, a big challenge. And controlling that conversation, because this is something that I think new agents really need to hear, right? Because I talk about this a lot, and I try to touch on it with people that I have here and that we spend some time together. And that is not being just like the order taker, and not just being this person that's there to give people a quote and a price, right? And just selling price, right? I always kind of say, if you sell price, you die by price, right? And so what was that like? 'Cause I know obviously you guys coming on and going into Empower, working with Dana, has an incredible sales process and system. And you were kind of doing that, I guess, in face-to-face, right? Because you were spending some time building the rapport and doing these things. But how important is that specifically, right? Like immediately finding the why, and then not being an order taker and not selling a quote, right? Not focused on price, but rather the pain points and why you need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I'll tell you right now, I won't give someone a price if they don't let me do my job right. I'm not, if they're just asking for, I'm just here for a quote, you can skip all this other crap you're asking me. Just tell me what 50,000 is. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to help you. I don't.
Right.
Because I'll tell them, I do my job a certain way because that's how I know how to help people best, and if you don't mind, that's what I'm going to ask these questions for. So I understand how to help you best. Because if I don't understand your situation, I can't tailor that policy to you for your needs and what you want. And I'm also not going to be an order taker at the end of the day. So that's I view it out the gate. But yeah, it's huge. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow when someone's asking for the price and you don't want to lose the lead. You're hoping it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, that sounds good. I'll do that one. And the one, the one where that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do it right now. Don't even know
let's do it. And then it cancels like a week later, because somebody else called from like a $5 less premium,
Yeah, my bank got me 120,000 for less than what you got me. So it's like,
yeah, that's how it is. So it's such an important thing to talk about, right? It's funny, but it's not. And I think every salesperson goes through this. It doesn't matter what you're selling. We're always keen, especially in the beginning, of like, you go to the price, right? All right, let me give them the quote because that's what they want. That's what they're asking for. And once you do that, typically they're gone and you've lost all control of the conversation. So really important what you said, right? Redirecting, right? Because if they're asking you for the price, you acknowledge it, you redirect, and then you control, right? And you're taking them where you want to take them. So I think
you go right back in what you can do.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think those are huge, really key points for people. And so now you start writing, right? You start doing 30,000. I think sometime in maybe September or probably October, November is when you and I connected and we started running campaigns for you.
Yeah, I want to say it was October. I don't know. I couldn't think of what our other lead source would have been then, because I'm pretty sure I started with Scale My Social out the gate. But I also think that was before, with some tweaks were made with you and Dana and how everything's kind of set up and whatnot, and just kind of the benefit of being on the Empower side of things versus if you just came in out of the blue. But also just kind of reflecting back to the previous conversation, something that I found interesting and, still applies to today is, Dana has a phenomenal script that, she teaches, she preaches. But what we did, me, Matt, Hunter, and then, a girl that came over as well, her name's Geneva. We had our own specific script and pitch that we knew inside and out from the field sales. And so when we came over, we tried, just going straight off of, what Dana suggests. And again, it's phenomenal. But because we were just accustomed to kind of doing it a certain way, we like my pitch now, my sales pitch for how I go about talking with anyone, it's a mix of both. So it's like shows the importance of like there's no one script that works. It's you got to kind of find what works for you, and then it hones in more on what Dana teaches us of the being able to emphasize and capitalize on the certain parts of there. It should be like a skeleton you're following, but there's no certain word script or anything that fits with every client. So
I love it.
It showed that, we have a little bit of what we learned, but then there was a lot more to apply to what we already had from Dana.
Yeah, I think that's a really good method to go about it, right? Because I think that's another thing, right? When you're brand new in any sales, you're just like reading a piece of paper, you're reading off of a script, and until you find your way a little bit, of course you had some experience, you were, probably knocking on doors trying to get people to let them, do their lawn and then sell them life insurance. And so you had some experience of finding your way, and you have a good personality, right? And so I think that's a big part of it. But I think that's really important, man. Like having following a skeleton, but you got to put your own touch to it, right? You want to have the guidance and the template, so to speak, of like, okay, here are the things I need to cover. Here are the things I need to make sure I do. But ultimately, you want to connect with this person, and you do want to have, it doesn't want to feel fake, right? Because if it feels fake, if it feels like you're just reading off a piece of paper or a script, then it's going to be really tough. So, which is hard, right? In the beginning, especially because you're nervous and you don't know where to go, and you're trying to do an e-app and all these different things. And so I think do you think that like those things get easier with consistency, with activity? Like what develops that skill in a newer agent?
Reps. Just like if you can fail as fast as you can. Like there's essentially in my head, there's only so many scenarios that you will run through with like the type of people you're talking to, the different objections. The more you hit all those bumps in the road, the more you know how to handle them next time. And there's not going to, end of the day, what is it that we're saying? Ass in the seat time. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You can be an amazing salesman, but if you don't learn the process of, kind of how the insurance game kind of goes, how the type of clientele thinks, you're only going to learn that through reps and time putting it in.
Fantastic. All right. So now you have somewhat of the system going, right? Now you start becoming more consistent, right? Because you're getting the reps in. We again start working together. We start running some campaigns for you, and now you start tracking, right? Which is a big thing that I use you as an example all the time. You know this, right? Because you're one of for me, based on all the clients we have, you're actually in a small group, a small percentage of clients that does really well at tracking and your numbers. So you started really tracking your numbers. When was that? Was that December or sometime that you really honed in on tracking?
We kind of had like for the end of 2025, it was,
Right.
I was tracking, it's, name of the client, how much coverage, what they're paying, the total AP, what I'm going to get paid on it, and then like their start date. And then they kind of revamped, our team kind of revamped the tracker that we were using to where it goes a little bit more in depth, the date you wrote it, the date it's supposed to start, where the lead came from, if it's a banking payment or a card payment, notes, who their beneficiary is. But then also on the activity page, that's just for, people, you're right. But the activity page kind of goes into depth of the pickups to quotes, pickups to conversations to quotes to closed apps. And you can even go a little deeper. But then also like the amount of time you're on the phone in the CRM. I track my time that I'm working on new clients versus if I'm backtracking, having to rewrite an old client, separate time going towards new profit. And yeah, it's all just like really simple, my like clock in and clock out kind of method for, if I'm done for the day, that's the last thing I do. That's how I know I'm done.
What's it done for you, right? Like now that you are consistent and it just becomes part of what you do every day, like brushing your teeth, right? And getting dressed, like how much has that helped you, your business, and just where you are now?
I mean, I literally couldn't tell you what I did last month activity wise, unless I looked at my tracker.
Right.
Like this stuff, the stuff blends together. Hell, I mean, I couldn't even tell you like if Monday was a longer day for me and today's Wednesday, or if it was a shorter day. Like it just, all this blends together. But having a tracker to go back and see, okay, over the past 3 months, on average, I make this many dials, I get this many closes, based off this many leads, which cost me this much money. Everything can be reverse engineered. And you and I have gone into that to kind of set goals for myself on what needs to increase in order to get to the next level. And it honestly keeps you sane in the business. Not only is tracking your production of previous clients and stuff help you be a good, representation for their, being their personal agent, their family's agent, because, Miss Betty Jones calls me up from February and asks, hey, I didn't see my payment come out this month. Is everything okay? I probably don't remember Miss Betty Jones, but I can go back. I can see, okay, Betty, we got her American Amicable. It was this size policy. Her beneficiary is her son, James. And, that allows me to just take me right back to that conversation. Like, okay, I know who Betty is. And I put a note in there. She talks about her cats, right there. I know exactly who Betty is. But yeah, I mean, tracking.
It's so important. Yeah, it's so important, man. I again, something that salespeople are not very good at tracking, right? I think by nature, most salespeople have a really hard time. And I would say that of the, over 150 clients that we work with actively, like it's maybe 10, 20% actually track, right? Like really track their numbers. And so it's a really difficult thing. But if you're out there listening and you're watching this and you're new, or maybe you've been in the business for a while and you don't track, right? You just work off a notepad and you take notes and stickies. And you did, right? Yeah, that's what I used to do all the time too. It's like, I think one is you're leaving money on the table, right? The business becomes emotional, right? You're on this roller coaster because if you don't track, you don't have any analytics, you don't have any data to understand, well, am I really dialing? Am I really being efficient? Do I have enough leads? Is my skill at the right level, right? Like all these questions that unless you have data to answer, all you have is emotion, right? And feeling, right? And it feels like I worked enough yesterday. It feels like I had enough leads. Why am I not making more money, right? And so I think that tracking eliminates the emotional aspect of things. And you made a really good point, right? That I think you and I had this conversation a couple months ago, which was, tracking is so important to be able to go back and look at, right? And make decisions on and understand what you did, what you didn't do, where you messed up, what you did, what you should have done, what you shouldn't have done. But for me, right, and I said this to you again a couple months ago when we went through this, it was like, man, data is great to look back on, but it also has to be used to move forward, right? It has to be a tool for you to take risk, right? Calculated risk, and say,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? I'm here. Clearly, this is what I'm producing. This is what I'm capable of doing. I'm doing the work. I'm doing the activity. What else do I need to do? Well, I need to maybe press the gas, right? And start scaling this thing, because data is telling me that if I do, I'm going to be able to get to these next numbers. What was
Yeah.
that like for you? Because I think up until we had that conversation, you maybe weren't looking at the data in that way. What was
Mhm.
that like when you were like, shit, man, yeah, we should be using this to actually forecast and move forward in the business, not just essentially looking back on it?
Yeah. I mean, essentially it's like, in my head, it's like, okay, I just got to keep getting better. Okay, well, getting better, you can do that in 20 different ways. Essentially, do I hone in my sales process? Do I make more like everything like that? Versus if you look at all the numbers, you kind of crunch it down to what you're really working with. You really only need to put your foot on the gas pedal a little bit over here and pull a
Mm,
little bit on the brake over here. um, it's not as complex to, if you're having success, then you just need to keep doing that and increase, whether it's volume or activity or whichever it is. It's also, with tracking, it's a huge benefit for when you're new to the business.
mm,
It has its pros and cons for new people in the business, but also, vetted people in the business. But for a new person to come in and they're learning this process, they're drinking from a fire hose, first 6 months is the hardest. They're getting stuck. They get hit with the same objections or so. You can go to your upline. You can say, I keep getting stuck. I don't know what's going on. And you can look at their numbers. You can say, okay, so you get, this many pickups. And then you get, a lot of conversations if someone picks up the phone. But then it seems like when you get to quotes, you're not closing. So we know we need to hone in on your closing process and everything that happens after you give quotes, or everything right around quotes and over. So you can kind of hone in on a certain part of your script that maybe you don't even know that you're lacking on.
Man, it's incredible. And you've been kind enough to give us the ability to share your actual tracker. And so I do want to go through that, because it's so important, right? And I'm just going to pull this thing up and dig into this a little bit, right? And
Mm.
so this is your tracking sheet. And of course, this is a proprietary thing that you guys came up with your group. And I think it is incredible, right? I honestly think that this thing is, when you showed it to me the first time, right? And I know everybody in the group is using this thing. I was so
Mm.
impressed with it, because when you run ads, right? And I think this is something we'll talk about a little bit, like the difference between buying leads and just running a campaign, is that if I'm able to, right, as a marketer, see these numbers and this data, then there's a lot more levers and things that I can do to help your campaign, which ultimately help the delivery, the quality of the leads, the cost of the leads. And so this is so, so important, guys. And I just want to kind of break this down a little bit. And this is going back to, the December month, right? And so the
It's
December
January.
month, or January, right? Here we go, January. So end of December, right? Last couple of days, and then January. And I mean, this is broken down to daily, right? How many pickups you had, how many conversations, how many quotes, the dials that you made, how much time you spent on the phone with
Mm.
people, hours worked. And so this is an incredible, incredible thing to have, guys. And if you're not using some sort of tracking system, again, you're leaving money on the table. You're reckless, right? You're on a roller coaster ride, and you're hoping that you'll be able to have some control over it, but you won't. That's the reality, and I think the facade that people have, that if you don't track that, you still will be able to make money, and you might be able to make money, right? But you have truly zero control over your business. But here is the example, right? Like,
I wouldn't know how
man,
to do this business without tracking, if I'm being honest. There's no
right,
clue. Like, there's stuff I
right.
was rewriting today from February that if I wasn't tracking it, I would have no clue it, was something that fell off the books or so.
Yeah. And so, to look at this, like you're looking at how many leads I got on a weekly basis, right? How many leads I got for the month, your ad spend, right? How much money am I spending in my business? And then obviously how much money I'm returning in my business, my return on investment, how many policies you close, your closing rate. And so I remember the first time you showed me this thing and just being like, man, this is incredible, dude. We're going to be able to do some real work with this thing. And we have,
Mhm.
right? Every month now, you and I, we sit, we go through every single month. Obviously, December, we can see you wrote 28,000 bucks. It tells you, this is so important. Watch this, guys. How many pickups he had, how many conversations off those pickups, right? And the percentages, right? So he quoted 61% of the people that picked up. And from that, he quoted, right? No, I'm sorry, 61% you quoted off the conversations that you had, which is an incredible number. And then you closed 23 deals in that particular month, how many dials you did. And of course, super, super important, something that I always follow and I'm keen on is your cost per acquisition, right? So in December, you acquired policies or customers at $136, an incredible month. A really solid month in production, 28,000. And now you do this every month, right? Now you go in and you look at February and you had a lighter month. I think you had some travel going on. And
Yep.
here's the interesting part, right? And this is some of the stuff that we looked at together, right? Was, well, why did I have a lower month, right? Why did I produce 20 versus 28? And I know we went through this, but in December, or I'm sorry, in January, you did 425 leads were generated. And I know at the end of the year, last week of December, I use this as an example all the time, right? Like you left the ads running, even though holidays, all this stuff going on, you came
Mhm.
back that first week of January with a bunch of leads to call. And it was the abundance of leads, right? Having over
Yeah.
100 leads a week that puts you in the position to be able to write this kind of number, right? And you see clearly in February that number was, gosh, almost half, right? Almost
Mhm.
60% of the volume is actually what you took in the form of leads. And even with that, right? And this speaks to your skill, right? Because even with that lower intake, you still submitted 20, right? So you only did 60% of the leads that you did in January, but you submitted a really high amount. We could see that your close rate was really solid in the month of February. But again, guys, the biggest thing why I want to show this is because this takes emotion out of all of it, right? Being able to break this stuff down and like look at it and say, okay, because here's an example, right? Some things are the result of a campaign or the leads, right? Man, they hear that things are free or people who are overly sick, which we'll touch on in just a minute. But outside of that, right, I think it's really important to understand, well, if I do, in this case, if I do 49 quotes, what am I closing off of that, right? And so this percentage is very, very important. And as new agents, you're going to find that you're probably from the quotes, right? Like if you're having a good amount of quotes and you don't convert at least, gosh, I would say, 30%, right? On the bare minimums, if you're a newer agent, then guys, something is off with your presentation, right? Something is off with what you're saying in that pitch, what you're using to convert, because you're losing too many people, right? And a really good number, I think that I see, good agents out there is 50% or higher, right? If you're converting 50% or more of the quotes that you're giving, then you're heading in the right direction, right? And it's not going to be perfect every single month, but knowing
Mhm.
these numbers lets you really hone in on this shit and go, man, I need some work in the sales, or gosh, the leads that I'm buying are not good because I'm having, low pickups, or I'm having a lot of pickups, but I can't get them to a presentation because they think that it's free, or all the things that we see out there, right? So let's hone in on March real quick, right? Which is the most kind of recent month, and obviously you had
Yep.
a really good month here. Average close rate almost 8%, which is an incredible number. Still, right? Kind of a lower amount of leads. And of course, we had some struggles, us as a marketing company in the month of March. We had a massive API shutdown. Grant, you stuck with us, right? And I'm so grateful, man, that you did, right? Because others might not have, right? And we didn't. There was several agents that said, gosh, I got to figure this out, and I'm not getting the leads. And it was a tough couple of weeks. And you really stuck by it. What made you, right? Because again, we're not perfect, right? We're not aces, and we're not 10 out of 10 every single month. But what was the maybe one or two things that you said, man, you know what, I'm going to stick with this because A, B, or C? Like, what made you kind of stay in the system of the lead generation versus just going and buying leads?
I mean, you can look at the screen. That's with a meta crash right there. Scroll up and see the other. Like, I mean, it's working. Like the stuff works. Tracking makes it better. It allows you to have my ads perform better in my favor. It's a win-win. But also just being able to have the relationship with that you and I do, someone to coordinate one-on-one with, and be able to talk numbers, crunch those numbers down to see what that next level is going to be versus, lead vendors out there where they're just like, okay, you pay me $1,500, I give you 75 leads. And then that's that. You don't really get any kind of like, when I think of insurance, it's a long-term game. You can make good, quick money as well. But like, if you want to not burn out in the business, you want a slow, steady, rise. And so what better way to do that than to have a ad campaign for yourself that the longer you're with it and the less you mess around with it, the better it gets. You're putting the same amount of money in each week. You're qualifying, out of the 25, 30 people I'll end up finishing policies for this on last month. Those people that I mark a quality lead, they were healthy, they had a bank account, they were the ideal client for me. That goes right back into the system to try and generate more of those people. Like it makes no sense to me why you wouldn't, because as long as you keep using the system gets better. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what I always tell clients, man. It's like the control that you have, if we have this kind of communication and this kind of relationship, we're not just out there obviously optimizing on a cost per lead. We want to focus and we want to hone in on those things, but there's so many other aspects of running campaigns, guys, even now more than ever, right? It's no longer just about running one or two creatives and looking at a cost per lead and that's it, right? Like, you got to be running pixels. We got to be using tags. We have to understand what is a quality lead, what is coming up as a high intent, what's working and what's not, right? And so those are the things that running ads, right, with a company that knows what they're doing, those are some of the benefits. And it's clear, right? Obviously on your end, the skill, the activity, all the things that you're doing are showing, and you continue to move. We've set a goal right now. We know that, okay, I need to get to over 115, 120 leads a week so that I can get to the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 production months. And of course, April, we're here now. There's still, 8-10 days. And so far we've hit it, right? So far we're at that 120, 115 plus leads every single week. And it takes some time for that to bake in. But again, knowing the data allows us to push forward, take the risk, and give us a better understanding of where we need to go. So guys, this is what Grant's been doing, right? Man, he's been in this business for a pretty good amount of time. Right? 2 years. Yeah, man.
Less than
knocking on doors.
2 June.
I love it, man. Right. So 2 years, guys. And Grant, now you're building, right? You're building an agency. You're starting to help agents do the exact thing that you're doing and better, right? And helping them avoid some of the pitfalls and things that you kind of came across, right? And so, guys, I do always want to share this. Like, if you're out there and you're thinking about man, I don't know if I'm in the right system or structure, or shit, I'm thinking about joining the insurance and I don't know where to start. Guys, the system that Grant, that his entire team has put in place, of course, with Dana at Empower, with Lasting Mark, like these are just incredible, incredible companies that are building and changing the way that fundamentally insurance is done, and how the agent progresses. I highly recommend, guys, you got to go check out Grant, spend some time. I know you're right now actively looking for agents, right? You're trying to grow your team right now.
100%. I would love anyone that is hungry, whether you're new to the life insurance business or you're in it and you just don't have the systems in place. You know, I know that Lasting Mark, our team at Empower, we have the systems there. So it really comes down to someone that just really wants to change their life. The insurance industry has changed mine for the better financially, and I'm less than 2 years into the business, so I can only imagine where I'll be 2 more years from now. And so I'm finally at a place where I feel like I can pour into someone else and help them get up to that level.
I love it, man. I love it, man. And of course, guys, we're going to put all of Grant's information somewhere down here below. You'll be able to contact him. But Grant, how do they reach out to you if they want to find you on social media? If they want to email you, just give us that information. Of course, we'll drop it in the bottom, but give us that. And then
my selling account, I just started not too long ago, but that specifically would be Selling with Smith 101. That has my personal, my personal Instagram account in there as well. So you can or you can find Grant Smith 18 on my personal account. They both got them in the bio, so you can find me one way or another. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email, a phone call, whatever it is. It's 2026. We can reach out a couple different ways.
You can reach out, guys. You're going to see a lot more of this guy, man. I'm again super grateful, man, that you spent a couple minutes with us, sharing your story, pouring into just strangers out there, right? So, guys, again, if you're interested in working with Grant, with Empower, go check him out. Details are on the bottom. Man, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today and spending this time. I am so looking forward to, man, where this next year, 2 years goes. And I know you're going to be in an incredible position, man. So I appreciate you. Guys, stay tuned. Somewhere above here, below, somewhere on here is the next video. And I'm pretty sure the next video that you can watch right now is one of your colleagues, Sydney Deschatella, which we just did an interview with. And she pours in just as much as you did, man. So I appreciate you again, Grant. Thank you for being here, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Oscar. I said she's a hoot. Go watch her.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you so much, brother. And enjoy the rest of your day, man. Thank you, bro.